This is the Leaders on Fire podcast. On this show, we'll be inviting guests in to talk about crucible moments in their lives and unpack how it developed character and perseverance and how they emerged as leaders on fire. We hope that this podcast is an encouragement and an inspiration to you.
Today, I get to have a dear, dear friend of mine, a father-in-law, a mentor, community influencer. His name is Brent Wildman, and he's got some great stories to tell. You're not going to want to miss it. So let's welcome Brent to the show. Brent, welcome to the Leaders on Fire podcast. Man, it's awesome to have you participate in this with me and to be a guest today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So we go back a little ways, don't we? I think I've known you, Brent, for maybe I shouldn't say how many years, because it's a lot of years that I've known you. Definitely over 30 years. And you've been instrumental and influential in my life personally, in a significant way. And I'm speaking on behalf of many, many, many others that would say the same thing about you. So we're excited to hear from you today and to hear more about you and kind of your heart and maybe talk about a couple crucible moments in your life. But first, why don't you tell our listeners, who's Brent Wildman? Do you have a family? Just tell us a little about who you are.
That's an interesting question, who you are. You've seldom stopped to think about who you are, but an incredible history of family and so on. Grew up in Napanee till I was 11, moved to Warsaw. To me, that was moving to the city. So I'm a country boy at heart. I still think I live in the city of Warsaw, But what a place to come to, because this was instrumental in my life in that I moved here in 6th grade and there was all kinds of competition. There were sports going on in the elementary schools and stuff. And I thrived in that, the challenges of sports. And I was coming alive to that. And that was it hit me at the exact right moment. It also hit me right at a time that I had come out of church camp and had dedicated my life to be, which is a whole story behind that, to be a full life recruit worker. Now that's one of those things that oftentimes will bring me to tears because God had a purpose for life and all I had to do was say yes. And at those early years, I began the pattern in the process of saying yes. And then as I stepped forward, God kept taking me another step forward. It's been an exciting life of many, many, many steps forward. And with God, it's all about relationship and with so many people. And so that's the exciting part is to come from a family of brothers and sisters and to move to this community. Now our family is that of 5 kids, 15 grandchildren, and some of them being married and many of them living here. That's the cool thing about coming out of business in this area. Many of them have planted themselves in this fabulous community of Warsaw. And so we have a life that just rains down blessing and it doesn't stop. Sometimes we have to look up and say, could you hold just for a moment? Because having problems swallowing and digesting all of this. But anyway, that might be a little more than you ask for. You're one of those blessings, by the way. Yeah. And all of your children are the blessings in our lives. And now your grandchild, which is our great-grandchild, is like, who would have thought, that you being this kid in 2nd grade that I remember walking up our driveway and talking to me. I remember you distinctly walking up our driveway as an elementary kid and talking to me in the driveway. And here we are. Now you're leading the conversation.
Yeah. Well, man, what else is kind of interesting about that? And I share this in the book that I wrote, All In, and I want to share this again for the listeners in case they haven't read that. But there's a chapter in there called live like the good news is really good news, right? And part of that story is my own personal testimony of when I came to know Jesus as my Savior and the Lord of my life. And your son Josh, we talked about this when we did the podcast with him recently. He asked me to go on the ski trip when I was 14, the 2nd mile ski trip that you've been leading for a couple decades, many decades. And on that ski trip is when I realized that I was broken and I was in need of something. And you walked me through that process and that salvation prayer. So you brought me to faith, which is interesting. So that was in your driveway, and our interactions throughout childhood and interactions with your kids, and then becoming friends with them, and then having an interest in your daughter, you brought me to salvation. You're my father-in-law now. I mean, it's pretty remarkable how that story worked, and that I was brought to faith by my own father-in-law, who I didn't know at the time was going to be my father-in-law. I don't think at that time I had fully committed myself to Bobby's the one I want.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's cool. Our connection there is really cool. Let's fan the flame a little bit, and let's talk about a little bit of the journey of how you got to where you are today. And I know that it's a big story. There's a lot in there, but I'm talking about how there is something that occurred that got you into business. And I believe you had a vision early on when you were younger, about getting into business, even though you wouldn't consider yourself a business guy, but you used it as a vessel for this full-time life recruit work that you're talking about. You met Karen along the way, and then you resettled back here. You got involved with your dad and Wildman. Maybe just unpack that a little bit, and how that got you to where you are today, and kind of what your passion and focus is. So I know it's a lot to unpack, but let's just see what comes out.
I've used this term a couple times. Every once in a while, Josh will say, "What is that? How you describe that?" I said, I was a non-business person sentenced to 25 years of hard labor, and then I was set free and released into adventure ministry. And I guess that 23 years was what you call the crucible experience of kids and morphing businesses and doing all of these things, and then was suddenly released into this. But how did I get into business in the first place? I had at about 12, 13 years old, after we had moved to Warsaw, I was cleaning the dry cleaning store on a Saturday morning, doing the sweeping and the mopping and all this stuff. And I was kind of done, and Dad pays you cash out of the cash register, and he says, I'm going for a cup of coffee. You're in charge. I'm going, and then he showed me how to find the orders and to do it and how to run the cash register, and he walked out. And I go, okay. So I kind of followed him out the front door after he was gone, and I stood, and that doorway is still here in Warsaw. The same door is still here. I could show you the. I stood on the sidewalk, and I remember looking both ways and go, someday I'm going to have to provide for a family. I know that I will be back here and be in business. I just knew that, and that was actually God's call in my life. I was 13 maybe at the time, and I was 26 when after Karen and I were married, and we moved back from Montana. But all along, I knew that God had a call in my life. And although I did my Jonah run away and all the way to the West Coast and all the way back through Montana, I was still coming home, and I knew it. And so by the time I got home, the scope of the business had changed, the location had changed, and I just plopped into what does God have? And from there, we just kept opening doors, and as you say, fanning the flames, doing the impossibles, the things that other people would not do or wouldn't dare to do. We just kept creeping forward in all these things, and it's turned into the scope of it that what those businesses are now. That's because who was behind it? I'm a non-business guy, but who was the business person behind it that controls all the economy of all the world? Who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills? Jesus. And so as we moved forward in faith, he continued to bless it, and he continues to bless it today. I mean, literally this very day, he continues to bless it. I don't know. I am just very glad to not have to be in business anymore. I'd rather be in the people business than in the dollar business.
For sure. Well, and like you said, you served an incredible purpose at a time in that business's life cycle, and took some pretty significant risks that you trusted your Heavenly Father, God, to provide for, that probably without that faith, you might not have taken those risks. Because I remember you sharing the story previously of when you literally turned the keys over to God and said, this is beyond me, and you're going to have to bring the people, you're going to have to bring the resources. And it was related around this whole acquisition that doubled the size of the company pretty quickly, and was a very risky decision. And it paid off, because it was the foundation and the birth of a whole new generation of life that came into the company.
When you look back, the original business that my father was in, that industry almost does not exist anymore, and that was dry cleaning. It's gone. Okay, we ventured into a market that was already dominated by somebody else had a stronghold on it, but we moved in, not knowing that they were in the process of falling apart as a company, and so God was preparing us in what looked impossible, but He was preparing us for a whole field that was opening up, and that's where we've been. And then the funny thing is, to tie this back into Scripture, is God says, when you have been faithful with a little and continued faithfully in the littles, He says, I will give you much to be faithful over. So the last big challenge is what you referenced, and it was another literal impossible situation that never should have happened. Only because He made it possible, did it happen, that we were able to, acquire another company that doubled the size of ours. We had no resources. God supplies the resources to do that, and it made possible many of the things that are happening today. If to lay the details out would take far too long, but believe me, it was one of those, it never should have happened. By a rational mindset, but we kept pushing forward, and boom, it happened, and it became what it is now.
Yeah, and it is it's an awesome story to think about. And the thing I like about it is, as you took those risks, it created opportunity for the next generation to come in, which was part of the releasing or the launching for you into the next season of life, where you truly were living out all that God had prepared for you along the way. And it's almost like you needed that sentencing, because it was refining and it was character building for you to be able to launch you into a season of life where you've been pouring yourself into people full time for 20 years now. Not that you weren't in business, but you had to deal 80% of the time you had to deal with business stuff.
Yeah.
And you still were able to pour into people. You get launched out. Now all your time is spent investing into people. And I say that because there are countless people who will remember how you've impacted their life just through relationally pouring into them.
The interesting thing is relationally pouring into them, but in a little different, in that we pour into people through challenge. We say, won't you come with us? Oh, no, I can't. I could never do that. Yeah, you can. We stay after them. And then, so the organization that we ended up starting as we left business, it's called Second Mile Adventures. And it's the name of it speaks for itself. It's, the first mile of life is birth to death. That's the mile that you're born into. The second mile is what you allow God to challenge you into, and what you should do with the talents and the things that you have. And so we come along to challenge people to a second mile slogan is to go a new distance, physically, mentally, spiritually. And so we give them success in the physical and the mental power to do it. And then we help them apply that to the spiritual. Culturally, we're we worship the physical, and we worship, our mental degrees and all of these things, and we toy with the spiritual. But all of this is supposed to be worked towards the spiritual, and so that's the whole new distance. When Jesus came into his ministry, he went and restored life to many through miracles. And then he stood in front of the people. You see what has happened. You see what I came to do. He said, then he read out of Isaiah that this is being fulfilled in your presence. Today, I am here doing these things that were written years ago. And he said, you are going to have to change the way you think. And so in order to change how you live life, you have to change the way you think. And so everything that we do through Second Mile Adventures, marriage retreats, all of these things is all about challenging your thought. Challenging your thought. Because right now your thoughts have been shaped by your culture, the culture that we've lived in. And Jesus wants that changed. He wants you to get thoughts from his culture. Is funny. Dallas Willard described it in a way that you kind of go, huh? He says, it means this: to get a thought about your thoughts, a thought from beyond your own thoughts. What? Oh, that's what Christ called us to when he said, you must repent. It's your thoughts, not your actions. Actions will follow thoughts. Get a thought about your thoughts, but a thought from beyond your own thoughts. Stew on that for a while. That's Dallas Willard.
Yeah, that sounds like Dallas Willard.
Yeah.
I got to reread his stuff like 10 times to,
Yeah.
Get it to soak in. But when you were talking about that, it reminded me of a word that you use on the marriage retreats, marinade.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're talking about the culture, the world's culture, or the kingdom culture, Christ's culture, you challenge people to say, what are you marinating in? Right. Because that's the flavor that you're going to give off to those around you. Mm-hmm. And if you're marinating in the world, that's you're going to be of the world and living in that. If you're marinating in the things of God, that's when we live as if the good news was really good news, because we're marinating in that, and it naturally overflows. Mm-hmm. We naturally add the seasoning to those around us.
We smell like it. We taste like it. And it gives other people enjoyment.
Yeah. So let's segue a little bit. You talked about Second Mile Adventures. Let's segue to the crucible, and let's crank up the heat a little bit. And let's talk about the crucible. And we know that scripturally, the crucible metaphor is used to describe this purification process of precious metals, where when it's in the crucible, the heat's cranked up, it melts away impurities, and you emerge, the metal emerges more refined. And so there's this idea that God takes us through these crucibles, through these places. When we talk about challenging people physically and spiritually and mentally, and we talk about what Second Mile does, in essence, we're creating micro crucibles where people are challenged. And this is also why you have roped me into doing Ironmans. It's also why when Mason shared about cycling and doing Ironmans, it's the same thing. It's a physical representation of a spiritual process. This discipline that we endure, the perseverance to endure the physical challenge, produces for us a fruit, and it's a spiritual metaphor. And so, you and I just completed your 12th Ironman just a week and a half ago.
Yep. Full Ironman.
Full Ironman. And I'd like to comment this because it's remarkable. I use this all the time for people who make excuses for why they can't do it. I say, do you know my father-in-law, Brent Wildman? He did his first one when he was 60, and most people I'm talking to are in their, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. I'm like, so you got plenty of time to prepare. He started when he was 60, and he just did his 12th one at 72. And we're talking about, maybe we should mute this so Karen doesn't hear it. We're talking about what does next year look like to do another one, and who can we invite in. So I wanted to segue into the crucible and crank up the heat, because even this idea of Ironmans and going a new distance and second mile adventures and creating these crucible moments, it ties into perhaps some crucible seasons you want to share just in that whole conversation, and how we're refined because of those, and how we can learn perseverance and character. So let's get into the crucible, crank up the heat, and just have you kind of share around some of these ideas.
Oftentimes, when we think of crucible, we think of the heat, and we think of the burning, and we think of the pain in order to come off with the purity of what you want to work with. The crucible experience for me has been much like Ironman. It's like, you're entering the next phase, and it's going to be long distances, and you just have to put your head down and go. Just have to go. Whether you're prepared or not, you just have to keep going. Because for us, there is no DNF, did not finish. No, it's like we're here to do this, and we finish it. We also like to, in second mile, sometimes call that we create our own foxhole experiences. It's you, me, and maybe another guy and the Lord, and we're in a situation that looks like certain death, or we feel like that. And our only way out is, so I hope you're seeing that you got to call on Jesus, so that's what I feel like the only way out, and so it's like we create our own foxhole experiences, and our whole objective is that people call on Christ for life, that they call him into their life. And so it's that we walked all this distance, and we did all of these things in preparation for this long period, or this mountaintop that we've dragging ourselves to, and we get there. Okay. And so they have victory. And that's one of the atoning principles of Christ. He's Christus Victor. He's victory over the hardships of life. And so we live from that victory. So my crucible experiences have been more in the challenge zone as opposed to the really, really, really tough times. Or maybe it's that life is tough, period. We're always in a crucible, always in the crucible, whether we face it or not. Some people are looking for their way out, okay? Other people are saying, no, I want the refining. And so many of my experiences with God, it says, how do you talk to God? How do you speak? God chooses when to speak with us. We go into prayer with him, and we relate to him in a heart process, you might say. But there are times when he gives us a very distilled message, or this is what he does to me. And so they come not that often, but there was a moment. God talks to me when my brain goes on cruise control. When I've done something so many times, it's automatic. I'm out thinking, not about the thing that I'm doing. So one of those that I want to mention happened at the cut glass factory. You know where I'm talking? Mm-hmm. You've probably heard this story. It says, that is on my route home for lunch and my route back to work, right there at that T, and there's cars coming and going, and you got to wait, and you got to do this and do that. How many hundreds or thousands of times have I turned that corner and done this? Right there, in a wait, in an old dilapidated car, with the radio on, and Third Day comes on, a song that I have played on stage numerous times, listened to hundreds of times, not paid that much attention to the words. But I know the words. But this time, God lifted them from the radio and literally painted them on the inside of the windshield. What were they? Who is this King of glory that pursues you with his love? And as usual, in those moments, I know that that is a significant moment when God has intervened in life. And he says, this will be the pervading theme of your life from here out. You will be seeking me, remembering that I am pursuing you with my love, and that you are to bring that forward to all the people that you meet and that give you the liberty to do so. Who knows where it was after that, as the struggles of business is that, and we're struggling to grow and to just not be annihilated by the big boys, the competition, is that God brings the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in the door, and then he makes the financing happen. He makes the personnel happen. He makes all of these things that look right at the moment when you think it can't happen, it does. And that's God. And that brings it all back to who is this King of glory that pursues you with his love. And so my crucible experiences have all been in this: step farther forward. Step farther forward. Don't worry about the things of the past. Keep stepping forward and doing what I call you to do. And every day, he just continues to rain down the blessings of life on us. And he distills the message that we have for other people constantly. It's morphed into marriage retreats at an incredible facility in Hawaii that we own for no reason other than God provided it. There's no reason for all of these things other than God makes it so. So life itself is the crucible experience, and we are being refined if we allow it. We're being refined constantly. Do we seek it? Or are we, which can be pure gold and pure silver in God's eyes, are we allowing the world to turn down the heat and draw us back down and mix us with the dross, that which is going to be discarded and used as landfill? That's it. Those are our choices. We allow God to refine us and use us, and we are incredibly valuable. Or we become just like the refuse pile of the world, and life is lost.
Man, that's pretty powerful. That's a mic drop. I don't know what to say. No, man, that's so powerful and so true. And I love the way that you have explained that from your perspective. And, when we think of, like at the very beginning of James, when he says, consider it pure joy, my brothers, when you face trials of many kinds, and this, he has this hopeful perspective. I don't know if James was an optimist like you, because you're an optimist, right? And when there's challenge, it basically puts fuel on the optimism, to press through. And you wonder what James was thinking as he's talking about this hope, like through these trials and through these hardships and through tough things. There's a reward for finishing well. There's a reward for persevering. There's character development that comes from it. And he paints this picture like, this is good. This is good. Mm-hmm. And that's basically what you've articulated to me. Like, you lean in and you keep pressing forward, and you say, are you retreating from those things because we want to retreat to comfort, maybe even complacency, maybe where we're not challenged? Or are we going to step in and say, I know it's going to get hotter, but I'm doing it because I'm trusting God's going to show up. He's going to show up.
We often talk about it as going through the hole in the wall, going through the wall, that you are called from a complacent Christianity to to where God resides. But once you've allowed God to give up all that the world has, once you've surrendered life as Christ did, once you've done that and you've made it through the hole, your responsibility is not to exist on this side, but is to come back very easily back through the hole and to take people through with you. And they don't come sometimes willingly. And there's many more travelers on this side of the wall than there are on that side of the wall. But it's your responsibility and my responsibility to come back through and to challenge them through. And some will come. Some, but not all. And God sends us back for the few. He sends us back for the few because they need help. Jesus stood above Jerusalem and wept. He looked at all the people and he knew what he was looking at is that few would get it. But the few that do are to be the world changers.
That's the essence of what it means to be a leader on fire. I mean, when you're on fire for Jesus and the work that he's doing, our ability to lead is far greater. The ability to influence, the ability to live out all that he's prepared for us. If we're not living in the way that you're describing, we can't possibly be a leader on fire. And a leader on fire, in the verse is Ephesians 2:10, that we are his masterpiece. We've been created to do good works that he's prepared in advance. And if we lean in, and if we lean into this refining process and these crucible moments, these crucible seasons, this life of a crucible, we know that later in Ephesians in chapter 3, verse 20, he says, he will do more than we can think, ask, or imagine according to the power at work within us.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And I live there. I witness it. He has very little to work with, but I witness that happening constantly. We get to experience the pursuit of his love. And by the way, it is his love that made all that we experience as reality. It is his love that overflowed from him and created all of this into existence. How powerful is that? But to continually seek out, and only if we ask him can we even begin to comprehend who he is. We don't even have words that can describe him. And we exist because of his love. Fact is, as we talk in marriage retreat, we are the life within us is the expression of his love. Mm. There's no reason why we, as just a bag of elements, are alive, other than we are the expression of his love, and we are to express his love to all others. You've managed to get me worked up.
Well, on this topic, that's not hard to do because it's passionately embedded into who you are, and out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And that's why you live and act as if the good news were really good news, because you believe that it is. You believe it's the best news. That how could you contain it? How could you contain it?
How could I be silent? Yeah. And what an awesome thing to be able to partner with you, my son-in-law, that I knew was purpose-driven and purpose-oriented. And one of your purposes was to secure Bobby as your wife. I go, well, I think there's a future in this young man. You have my blessing.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Dan. Well, thanks for sharing all that, Brent. I was super excited to have you on the Leaders on Fire podcast, and praying that it's an encouragement, inspiration for those that will listen. So thank you so much for who you are and your passion for following Jesus, and to truly make him known in every circle that you walk, and to continue inviting people in. You continually invite people in. You continue to challenge people. And it's been an inspiration for me. And I know that I want to follow in your footsteps. I know that many others do, as well as the example that you've set. So thank you for giving us a little glimpse of that today, and for sharing that here today on the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Perhaps it has prompted a painful memory, or challenged you to reflect on times you were in the crucible. Some of you may be in a crucible now, but be encouraged. Maybe, just maybe, God is using this to refine your character so that you emerge as a leader on fire. If today's episode was an encouragement to you, share it with others who may also find encouragement in the Leaders on Fire podcast. So, let's go into the world sent out as leaders on fire. Until next time.